Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also visit thebittertruth.info, I-N-F-O, or you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebittertruth. Help us out there if you so enjoy the material so far. And you can also buy some fabulous swag to make your life better. So there's that. Today, a friend of the show, Dr. Joe Jarvis. He's been on before, and we're going to talk about a project he's been working on, ironically enough, called the American Health Security Project, and kind of get into the State of the Union from the last time we spoke. Dr. Joe, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Man, how's everything been going?
Well, we've started a new effort, a new project. So I've been busy, not just the one that you mentioned, although that's a very important one. I'm also trying to start a single payer movement in the state of Utah, where I live. And that looks like it might actually come to fruition in the near future. So I've got things going.
That's how it's going to have to go down, right? It's going to have to go down on a state-by-state basis, it seems.
That is clearly how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Have done for quite a while. But let's just look at the politics. The president of the United States has clearly articulated that he would veto a single payer bill if it got to his desk.
Sure.
And it won't ever get to his desk because we can't even get a hearing for it.
That's right.
In either house.
That's right.
So it's not going to happen in Washington, D.C.
Right.
It won't even happen, I don't think, in a legislature anywhere in the country. But it may happen through a ballot initiative. That actually, those surprises do occur. So
sure.
That's what we're working towards in Utah. We're going to try to organize a ballot initiative.
Well, man, good luck to you. I mean, I'm originally from California. I've been living here in Texas about 7 years, and they've got a chewy blue governor and a chewy blue supermajority, and they just shot it down again for the second time. Right. A single payer healthcare. I'm like, you're the sixth largest economy in the world. It's not like you can't afford it, and it's not like that state doesn't lay taxes on people. Don't tell me you don't have the money. That's one of the I can't even speak today. It's one of the more highly taxed states in the union. Let's give some people a bang for their buck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. So tell us about the health security project. What's that all about?
The American Health Security Project is what's going to become an independent expenditure committee. These are generally known in society parlance as super PACs. A PAC is a political action committee. They're intended to take sides on political issues and be able to belly up to other political interests and fight them tooth and nail over what really is going to be the policy of this country. So you concentrate your resources for people who are with you on any given issue, and you try to find the right markets where you can buy political speech and let people have it. So it's our view in the American Health Security Project, and I'm one of the steering committee members, the others being Lisa Theobald, Georgia Davenport, and Laura Fielding. It's our belief that there is a general sense of insecurity among all Americans of all political stripes about healthcare. No one is sure that they or their family will have the care they need or be able to afford the care they need when they need it. That fear, that anxiety, that insecurity has been part of American life for at least 30 years now.
Sure.
Because that the first time it became a political issue and actually a race turned on it, I think. So Harris Wofford was 40 points behind when that special election started in 1991. And he kind of was grappling around trying to find something to talk about. And he stumbled on health insecurity because that was an applause line that he got, basically saying people need to be able to get the care that they require, their family requires. And that really urged him to expand and elaborate on that theme. It became his campaign issue. And he went from 40 points behind and win the race by 10 points over Dick Thornburgh, who had been a very popular Republican governor of Pennsylvania just a few years earlier. And at the time he was running, Thornburgh was the Attorney General of the United States of America in the first Bush administration, when that Bush was highly popular after the first Gulf War.
Right.
So this really went counter to anybody's expectations. And it became clear that health insecurity was something people might vote on. Clinton ran on it the next year in 1992.
He sure did.
And George W. Bush ran on it in 2000 and won. And Barack Obama ran on it in 2008 and won. And even Donald Trump ran on it.
Yeah, he sure did.
He kept saying, "I will not touch your Medicare."
But he also said he was going to make it better. He's going to make the ACA better. He had a better plan, which gave everybody the impression that he was going to, do something different.
So this health insecurity remains a latent, very tappable political energy that can change outcomes of elections in the United States. And the American Health Security Project intends to help people figure out why it is that they feel so health insecure. We're going to buy political speech that will articulate this for them, explain to them why it's totally unnecessary. It's an artifact of the way we do business in healthcare, which is a stupid, foolish, ridiculous way of paying the highest possible price for the lowest possible quality and the most expensive, ridiculous health overheads and administrative wastes in the entire world. We already tax ourselves enough to take care of everybody's medical needs. We are the most taxed nation in the world for healthcare. We don't need to raise more money, more public money. We can have publicly funded, privately delivered healthcare in the United States right now and get rid of our health insecurity if we just start thinking about it right. And the American Health Security Project will help people articulate that for the first time all across the nation. And we will support ballot initiatives to put single-payer health system reform, which is the way to get this healthcare that we need, on every state that has ballot initiatives. We will help them with the politics, the actual financing of the campaigns. We will be able to help people articulate this once we get this started.
I don't know, Dr. Joe. It sounds super PAC. It sounds like you're in the money of big Medicare, man. It sounds like sounds like you're in the pocket of big universal health care. They're going to get you.
Super PACs have a very bad name, and deservedly so.
No, I'm just giving you crap. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm responding to it because this has been an issue that's been raised as we announced this. A lot of people have given us feedback. Why a super PAC? This is a terrible idea. Well, it is true. Super PACs are a terrible idea, but they are a fact.
And that's also the world we live in.
Yeah, that is the way politics is done in the United States.
That's it.
I'm a former Republican, and I was a McCain supporter, and McCain-Feingold would have gotten rid of super PACs,
right?
But it was overturned by the Supreme Court, and in Citizens United, and it is what it is.
Right.
We can't disarm unilaterally and expect to win the political races that we have to win over the next few years.
No, it's always it's like that joke. You're in the pocket of big peace. It's like, right. But you make a point. You said something a second ago, and I've broken this down before for other people because you said something about how we're taxed we are. People when you talk about this, they'll say, well, how much is it going to cost? Well, you never ask how much war costs, right? We're spending $1 trillion a year on this crap. And when I tell people you're paying 5 times, well, I don't want my taxes to go up. Well, what's it going to go up 0.3 of a point, 3 points compared to you're paying taxes, you're paying premiums, you're paying ever expanding copays, right? You're paying your Medicare contribution, which you don't get till you're 65. And then on top of that, there's denials when they deny you things. And I've got several friends that are in that denial category, like 6-figure level denials. I had one good friend of mine. She's getting shoulder surgery this morning. She's been dealing with arthromyalgia now for a long time. And about 3 years ago, she got a letter from her carriers and a couple of hospitals that even though she was approved, right, she was going to get nailed for $325,000 of what they now decided to deny after the treatment, right? Yeah. So she spent the last couple of years fighting this. Now it's down to like 75 grand, I think. But she's trying to get better. She's trying to get well. What kind of therapy is that to be in the whole $325,000 and then fight it down to $75,000? What are you going to take equity out on your house?
Right.
If you have a house.
Let's do a back of the envelope sort of look at public funding for healthcare, because it's not just that we never ask how much a war costs. It's just that Americans don't perceive how much they're actually putting into the public coffers that goes to healthcare. So let's think about this for a second.
Sure.
There's 4 trillion plus in American healthcare every year, right now, and of course it grows substantially year after year. As a percentage of the GDP, it's growing a lot. It's now about 20%, and it's unceasing. But right now, take a snapshot. It's $4+ trillion. Well, there's 500 billion every year or so, give or take, in Medicare. There's 500 billion or so federally in Medicaid every year. There's a big chunk of change in Indian Health Service and VA medical centers and the CHIP program. And maybe that's another 500 billion. How much is in the Obamacare supplemental amounts that people receive? That's another several billion dollars a year. The tax credit that employers get to buy health benefits, which are supposed to be in the private sector, but because of the tax credit, the taxpayers actually footing that bill. That's another $500 billion a year. The states raise money for their portion of Medicaid and for CHIP and for other health programs. That's another $800 billion a year. Private, small municipalities, counties, sewer districts, school districts, they all pay for public employees who have health benefits. Some of the best health benefit packages still around are those public employees. That's another chunk of change. You add all that up together, and my argument is you're getting close to something like 3 trillion a year. That's just public money. The taxpayers are already paying that. If you look at the waste inherent in the way we do healthcare business now, we have quality waste, meaning cost because we deliver poor quality care at 500 billion plus per year. And we have overhead waste, inefficiency waste due to the health insurance business model of another $500 billion a year.
Right.
If you take that $1 trillion a year of waste out because you do real health system reform, you don't need more than $3 trillion to do medically necessary care for every single American with no out-of-pocket cost at the point of service. Period. End of statement. We don't need to raise money. What we need to do is actually reform care the way we deliver it. Now, that's a political problem because what I called waste, the medical industrial complex calls profit.
Right.
And they're going to fight like crazy to defend those profits. That's a political issue. They give more money to the political process in the United States than any other industry sector does in our country. That's what we got to square up against. That's what we got to fight.
So let's just say you get it passed in Virginia. Let's say you get it passed in Utah. How's that budget going to work out for the state of Utah? And what kind of federal money can they expect to receive?
Well, the way I would like to forecast it is based on the State-Based Universal Health Care Act. It's been written and filed by Representative Ro Khanna. It's never gotten a hearing or anything, so I'm not alleging that this is about to pass. But this is the idea. Right. The idea is what currently would be destined for the state of Utah from the federal government, all of it, all of the various sources of it, would be all packaged together if Utah could produce evidence that they have a useful, meeting the minimum standard, federal standard way of spending the money so that everybody in Utah is covered.
Right.
For medically necessary care and no less than the minimum benefit package that's already true for Medicare. That's the way the bill is written. So Utah could come and negotiate that with the federal government, could show that it actually has a good faith plan to actually do all this. There's only one way to do it, and that's a single payer plan.
Sure.
So that's what Utah would have to propose. And what I've come up with as a proposal for Utah, I call the Utah Health Cooperative, is lower overhead. It targets getting better care, better quality care. So we reduce the waste. And we know that the federal government is the principal major funder of healthcare in this country. That's already true. It's been true for many, many years. It'll always be true. We also know that Utah and all the various other smaller governmental agencies in Utah also raise taxes. We want to capture all of those and put them together, all those public monies together in one pot, and then pay for the care that people in Utah need. That's how it would work.
Let me ask you something, and I get this kind of pushback all the time, but how do you handle the question when people say, well, I don't want to pay for people who don't take care of themselves. I don't want to pay for people who eat like crap and then they get cancer anyway. I don't want to pay for those people. What's your response to that?
Every single one of us has moments of personal neglect when we might cause ourselves harm. And every single one of us at some point in time drives too fast or ignores something on the road because they're looking around in the car or they're trying to reach for a snack. Everybody does something more, over and over again in their lives. We're all guilty. We're all guilty of this.
Sure.
To fat shame people who happen to be like myself, overweight, and tell me that I'm not therefore someone that should have healthcare paid for is stupid. It's ridiculous. I mean, I struggle with my weight and I have my whole life. I'm now on Medicare. Whatever risk I bring with me, I got on Medicare. If it's okay to put me on Medicare, why isn't it okay for everybody throughout whatever age they're in to get the care they need? Even if they do neglect the road at some point in time, even if they do drink too much or, on some occasion. Why is that? Why does that make them less worthy of having the care that they need? How do you think people are able to get to the point where they can make a useful change in their lives and improve their health if they can't be supported with proper care, preventive and otherwise, when they need it? How else are we going to get there?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a great comeback. Hey, so real quick side, not a side note, but kind of in the for-profit realm. And this is a stat I saw a long time ago, so I don't know if it's still current, but something in the neighborhood of 40% of counties have their hospitals controlled by private industry. And so when you look at, for example, people, they're kind of piggyback on what we just talked about, because you see these assholes that will say things like, oh, well, if they don't get the COVID vaccine, they deserve to die. That kind of crap, right? You talk to those people. I talk to those people. So, so my thing is, why aren't you punching up at the providers? Because in 1975, we had 1.5 million ICU beds. Okay. Now, as of today, and this has been this number's been standing for a long time now, at least a few years, we're down to 900,000 ICU beds, right? Because in 2019 we had a big flu breakout or whatever, and people couldn't get beds then, right? They were tents in parking lots then. But I didn't see anybody, hating on people that didn't get the flu vaccine, right? But that being said, why is it that people seem to gravitate toward what the narrative is versus what the obvious is? I mean, Governor Cuomo, in a 10-year period, got rid of 30,000 hospital beds in New York State, right? And this was at the peak when he was in that stupid television crap with his brother a couple of years back, and he won an Emmy for it, right? So he got in one decade, he knocked out 30,000 hospital beds. You multiply that by 50 states to varying degrees, that makes sense that we lost 600,000 hospital beds in a 30-year period. And now we have all these people getting sick. I don't see the government ponying up. I don't see any mandates being driven by the Congress to make a law that you can't cut hospital beds.
Yeah. So what you just said is the right way to phrase it. And that is that the narrative says such and such. The narrative is controlled about healthcare issues is controlled by the medical industrial complex.
Sure.
They are the big purchasers of ad space, and therefore they have a lot of influence with the newspapers and radio and television stations. They control the narrative. They control the politicians. The narrative written in the boardrooms of American health insurance companies is on the tongues of our congressman that afternoon.
Right.
They control the narrative. And the American Health Security Project is going to break into that narrative and control an opposite narrative, one that says, you know what? Most county hospitals in the rural parts of this country were built with public money. The Hill-Burton back in the 50s.
Oh, sure.
Over the years, those hospitals have been neglected because they don't fit the narrative of the for-profit interest. You can't make money. You certainly can't compete in a rural community. 50% of Americans live in a part of the nation where there's not enough population to support really even one hospital, much less two, to compete with each other. Sure. And yet the narrative is always about competition and how the market's going to make things happen. They neglect those places. They leave those people behind. No wonder all those people in rural America are so angry, because they're being left behind. They don't get their healthcare needs met, and that's only the beginning of the story in rural America. So we have to actually restate what the narrative is. If you're out in rural America or a part where there's only one hospital and it's suffering, and some for-profit interest has come in to buy it out and then suck all of the assets they can out of it before they leave it flat on the ground, no longer open. If that's where you are, we have, and you're worried that you might end up having to drive 50 miles for an emergency when you don't have the time to do that with a heart attack. If that's your healthcare anxiety, we have an answer for you. We know how to handle this. Public funding for privately delivered care that's nonprofit. That's what will take care of this. We can restate our interest, just like the Hill-Burton Act did in the 50s. We can restate our interest in every American community getting the healthcare it needs. And by the way, that brings jobs with it. Really good, well-paid jobs come with good healthcare that's provided to every community. That's the narrative that we're going to have to put out there, and actually identify the Cuomos of the world and say, hey, they're shutting things down.
Right.
That's not what we need. We need care. We don't need non-care. Right? We need to put hands on one another. We need to love one another. We need to be there for each other. That's what's going to heal the wounds in our body politic. That's how we're going to do it.
Right.
It's the narrative that will control how we go forward with this and help people be able to articulate, first, that they're feeling insecure, and second, what we can do about it.
Right.
It'll be easy. It'll be easy after everybody has a story to tell.
Well, and then on top of that, the pitch I always send back to people. I was at a playoff party the other day, and I got some friends that lean a little bit on the right side, And then when they were like saying, well, what do you want, a nanny state? I'm kind of going, well, hang on. You're a taxpayer, right? You and me aren't capitalists. We're worker bees. I hate to break it to you. We're not Jeff Bezos. We don't own oil, right? We're worker bees. We pay taxes. Don't you want more bang for your taxpayer buck like they get in other countries? Aren't you sick and tired of having to worry about, I had a buddy who had he wanted to get his kid circumcised, right? And, he wanted to wait the week or 10 days like you're supposed to wait, and the doctor's like, well, no, well, if you don't do it today, when you come back, it's gonna be $500. And he's like, but if you do it today, it's free. He's like, yeah, but then I risk my kid's penis. That doesn't sound like a good deal. So he went and got a moil. He got on Yelp and he found an internal medicine guy who's a retired doctor, but he's now a moil. He's like a rabbi. And he came to my buddy's kitchen and he did it for $400. But it's like, the fact is that this had to even be a question. Right. And he could afford to eat the $400, but but some people will be like, oh my gosh, I guess I better do it today because it's free today. If I don't do it today, they're going to charge me. It's like, what the hell kind of system is that? I mean, I was born in 1963, right? I was in the hospital with my mom for about 5 days, right? I saw that bill. My mom has a copy of all our bills because she's weird. It's in my little album. It was $300. My dad paid $300 for 5 days. Right. My brother was born in 1969. It was $900 for 5 days. I mean, my dad didn't even get health insurance until he was almost 50 because healthcare was actually so inexpensive in this country. Right. I ripped my arm open. I had to get 30 stitches. It was $40 if we went to the hospital, but he didn't want to take me, get all mad at me because I ripped my arm open. That's kind of asshole he is. So my mom walked me down to the doctor, the MD on our street, and he did it for $100. Right. 32 stitches with the tetanus shot, whole 9 yards. It's $100. Right. Yeah. My dad didn't miss his mortgage payment that day. Things have gotten so expensive. So when I tell people, don't you want more bang for your buck? Don't you want, you and I are about the same age, I think. I went to college for pretty much.
I'm a little older than you.
Probably. Yeah. Well, still, I'm 58 years old, man. So but I went to school in the 80s. My college was $100 a quarter at Cal Poly. Right. My cousin went to UCLA in the 70s. It was $5 a quarter and $5 a quarter for law school. His books were more expensive. Yeah. Right. So I always ask people, don't you want more bang for your buck? Why should you be paying 5 times for all the medical stuff that I just listed out when other countries have a better quality of life and are able to save more, put more away, and put more into the economy, frankly, because they're not spending all this stupid money?
Okay, it's even another way of responding to that nanny state thing is to say, yeah, but do you want a kleptomaniac state? Because we pay the world's highest tax rate for healthcare, and then our middle class is unable to get healthcare when they need it. Okay, that's ridiculous.
Right.
That is absurd. We're $3 trillion into a tax bill for healthcare. That should be enough to pay for everybody's care. That's public funds that should satisfy. And yet we have people who can't get the care they need.
Sure.
Because they don't have, because it literally is more than a house payment to buy health insurance policy. And even if you have it, the deductible is so much that it would bankrupt most families.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
It is.
Why do you think it's okay to have a kleptomaniac state?
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
I'm a Republican, or I was before they gave the store away to Trump, and I left the party. But I'm a basic believer in a lot of the ideas that people can take care of themselves, but not in building roads. We don't build a street in front of our house and expect our neighbor to do the same. We do that together. Right. Infrastructure like that and healthcare, hospitals were built with public money for a reason. It's too expensive for all of us to do it individually.
That's right.
These things are what government is for. Conservatives love government. They don't hate it.
Right.
That's a ridiculous, erroneous Ronald Reagan perversion of American
well, I mean, listen. I mean, people like look at me cross-eyed when I say Nixon was the last New Deal president. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, God, what? I'm like, okay, forget Watergate, even forget Vietnam, which I don't forgive him for. But because we had a real pressure from a real left in this country at one point, he passed OSHA, he passed Title IX, he passed the EPA, he passed the Cancer Act. Yeah, I mean, the Clean Water Act. I mean, he passed a lot of stuff that would be considered kind of a little bit on the left, right? But he did it because he's going, well, no, we I guess we do need cleaner air, and we're not doing it, right? And so all these things that
he had a Congress that would work and do stuff,
right? And so what Reagan did was basically what Jerry Falwell did. I mean, because we used to have a liberal church in this country, and we don't anymore. Jerry Falwell basically captured the leftover of the church, and anybody that even swings more on the social side, like the Berrigan brothers or anybody like that, they're demonized. They're demonized as not really Christian or not really a Republican. It's like, so when did the Republican Party become about screwing people? Because I remember when Eisenhower became president, and I'm not going to sit there and sing the praises of Eisenhower, but I mean, when he became president, they asked him what he was going to do about the New Deal. And he's like, are you crazy? I remember what 1930s were like. We're not going to get rid of the New Deal. No, we need this stuff, because it's why we pay taxes to make it.
Eisenhower was president when I was a very small child.
Okay.
I remember the Kennedy-Nixon debates. I saw them televised. I was old enough for that. So my original notions about politics came during the Eisenhower administration. And
sure,
I do sing praises. I think in infrastructure and in using the federal government to protect the basic rights of people, and in making statements about things like labor unions.
Right.
Eisenhower was right.
Right.
Eisenhower was expressing a conservative view that had been true since Lincoln, Grant, and Teddy Roosevelt.
Sure. Well, my issue with him is more covert crap, but yeah, my issues with him land on foreign policy, but yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct. You're 100%
articulate all of that. This is what I learned when I was a kid.
Right. Well, I saw 1956 when Ike was running for re-election. 1956 was this little. I'll send you the meme. I'll email it to you. It's hilarious. It's an actual Republican poster. Bragging about union enrollments are up, wages are up, all this great stuff that's going on. I'm like, wow, this sounds like a bunch of socialists to me. It's like, doesn't it sound like the Republicans that I know since 1980, right? Right. All this stuff, all these bullet points would get that guy completely railroaded. I mean, they would treat him like Rand Paul or Ron Paul, rather. You know what I mean? They would just not marginalize him, call him a kook. But back in 1956, that made sense because everybody in 1956 remembers 1936 and 1933. Remember that wasn't that great. And so now here we are. We have jobs and we have we have a thriving middle class. And at that time, we owned so much of the world's economy because everyone was so decimated. But not to get too
back in that era, we still had high regard for each other.
Yeah,
tribalism didn't exist when a Democrat won the election, like in 1960. Nobody talked about how the nation was going to fall apart and scream and cry about it and tear their clothes apart. Everybody kind of got together, and we could still, as a nation, do big things.
Right.
We could dream and aspire and actually accomplish. Right. All of those things were true of a conservatism that was willing to work with people of other beliefs and other political interests.
Well,
that's the conservatism that I still embrace.
Well, and to that point, I'm going to, because we got to wrap up here in a little bit, but to that point, I remember reading, and if you haven't read this, you should look it up. Richard Nixon did an interview with Playboy in 1967, and it looked like he was going to run. Right, he was already working at Mud Rose for about 5 years, and he was making like $1 million a year in 1960s money. I don't know why he decided to run for president anyway, but God bless his heart, he did it. But so Hefner is interviewing him, and flat out asks him, he goes, "Why didn't you demand a recount in 1960? You know, you lost by 0.46%. You had a legal right to demand a recount." And this is Nixon, by the way. So we're taking our personal development lessons from Richard Nixon. He says, well, the country needed to know who their president was. And I didn't want to lose the recount and look like a sore loser. So I thought, well, screw it. I'll just live the fight another day. But the people need to know that the system works. The people need to know who their president is. I'm going, Jesus Christ. You don't see that anymore, do you? No. You know, that's gone, you know. And then when Humphrey lost in 68, Humphrey lost by as much in 1968. That wasn't a landslide. And he had the same legal recourse, and he didn't do it. He didn't demand a recount. He said, no, man. I ran a race. I lost. You know, that's it. You know, people need to know who the president is and all that. We don't do that anymore. Now it's all a bunch of selfish toddlers on both sides, right? And so, but real quick, as we start to wrap up, what are you guys looking to do? How is it? How fast is it moving for you in Utah? What are you predicting for, like, say, but because we're in the midterm right now, and that's a great threat for a lot of people too. So, like, what do you got? What are some of your plans for the rest of the year as we move forward?
Well, the group that has convened itself about single payer reform in Utah as a ballot initiative has been working away at articulating a mission, vision, and naming the new organization for a couple of months now. And so we're ready to make some filings, create an actual organization, get all of the I's dotted and T's crossed. And so I hope we'll be in business and doing things by spring. We're probably not going to have a huge impact on this year's elections. And that's okay. We need to build a momentum. We need to find our allies. We need to be persuasive as much as possible to bring more people and more interest groups to our side, so that when we start swinging into 2000 or into next year, we'll actually start building momentum to write a ballot initiative, fund the political campaign, and maybe actually get it on the ballot as early as 2024. But if not, then 2 years after that. Okay, that's the rough plan.
All right. Well, cool. And then, are you guys planning to move this? Obviously, it's the American project. So, are you guys planning to move this out of Utah and into other states, or what are you guys trying to do?
Well, the members of the steering committee live all across the country. I'm the only one in Utah. There's a couple who are in Washington State, and one who lives in Pennsylvania. This is a national, independent spending organization. We're calling it the project. Right. This is national in scope. Our current task is to try to get enough people to pledge to us that they will make a donation, and how much that would be, so that we can eventually get to a point where we feel comfortable we have the operating expenses covered for 1 year. And thereafter, after we reach that level, we will call those pledges in and file the proper paperwork with the FEC and begin to do the serious business of raising the larger sums that it takes to weigh in and buy the political speech that we need to buy.
Now,
and start participating.
Are you affiliated with the Washington movement, whole Washington? Are you guys?
Two of the board members, two of the steering committee members are very intimately associated with whole Washington.
Okay.
The one in Pennsylvania doesn't currently have any equivalent to whole Washington.
Right.
Yeah, but it's been affiliated with whole Washington. She used to live in Washington, and it's Lisa Theobald.
Sure.
And so is familiar with the state-based, programs that are going on around the country.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Well, Dr. Joe, any parting shots as we wrap up? This has been a great little bit, and I like the Eisenhower sidetrack there, because I'm a geek for that stuff, so that's cool. But any
you heard it here first, people. The Utah thing this was the first announcement I made it to anybody. So
there you go.
First, Abe got the scoop.
I'm gonna cry. Maybe I made a joke the other day on Twitter. I said maybe I should threaten to pull my show off of Spotify, and then it would like help my algorithm then. Cause like Nils Lofgren. I don't know if you remember who he is, but like nobody under 40 knows who the fuck that guy is, right? And all of a sudden he decides he's going to pull his stuff off of Spotify. I go, dude, you were the lead guitar player for Bruce Springsteen once for a year in 1980. Like nobody knows who you are. You had one solo hit. Like nobody knows who you are except me because I'm a music geek. Nobody. Like, and then all Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
You pulled off Spotify. They got us some news.
Yeah, it's like, and you like, all of a sudden they get up there and they get the Google searches go through the roof, and I'm thinking, well, shit, maybe if I threaten to pull my show, they'll you know, and I like Joe Rogan, but you know, maybe they'll look me up and go, oh shit, who's this Abe guy? Why is he pulling his show? I think we're gonna go ahead and look at him. And, oh wow, he cusses a lot. He's bald. I don't like him. But no, man, it's an interesting time, and we just seem to keep gutting intelligence and gutting the censorship, or just promoting censorship. It just blows my mind. The so-called liberal in this country, like cheering on censorship, like they're so stoked about it. I go, don't you remember when the Born Agains were trying to do that in the 80s, and Frank Zappa and John Denver had to show up at the Senate to not censor records and just to get a little parental advisory sticker put on it. They wanted to like ban records. You know, it's like, oh, if you say this or that, you know, it's like, whatever happened to debating an idea?
Yeah, really. Why not talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in college, I was all born again. I came up religious. That's my little dark secret. And I came up religious. And you know, I was in Campus Crusade for Christ. That's another little admission. Okay. It's like, you know, for some people, it's that time at boys camp. For me, I was in Campus Crusade. But then, you know, next to us was the Atheists United table, right? And they didn't try to kick us out, and we didn't try to kick them out. We talked about it, right? And it was a silly discussion because, you know, like you can't prove nothing, and then we couldn't prove that there was. So it was just this endless circle. But nobody went to the dean and said they can't be on campus. They're violating. You know, I need a safe space. It's just, you know, and they didn't do the same. They didn't do that to us. You know, they had their little tracks. We had our little tracks, right? They had their little yellow tablecloth. We had our little, I think it was blue. I don't even remember now. But it's just like, you know what I mean? It's just like, but nobody does that anymore, man. And like to your point when you said earlier about the compassion part, you know, sometimes when this stuff comes up and people say they're so dyed in the wool about that, you know, well, my taxes shouldn't go to some guy who ate fried chicken his whole life. I go, well, then you believe in euthanizing, right? Then you believe in mass graves, right? You're no different than Hitler. Like, let's just kill these people. You know, like let's kill the invalids. Then let's just roll the wheelchair guys. Just, you know, he got into an accident. He's in a wheelchair now. Screw him. Let's just roll him off a cliff and say screw it.
You start down that road, then people who don't wear seatbelts or don't wear helmets when they're riding a motorcycle or a bicycle, or we start making rule lists like that. Yeah, there isn't anybody who's going to be able to get health care.
That's right.
Nobody's.
Rock climbers, none of it. So
it's all gone.
Well, folks, my guest has been Dr. Joe Jarvis, and really quick, because I wanted to get this out in the beginning, but he's the author of The Purple World and Herd of My People. And he's also a former state health official in the state of Nevada. And he's he's the executive producer of a new documentary coming out by Kenny Ballantyne, which I'm hoping to get him on the show when the documentary comes out. And I know Lisa's involved with that as well. And she's a friend of the show. She's been on before. We did a 2-hour thing with her one time about 5-6 months ago, like a 2-parter. Because if you know Lisa, she can go. So it's like I just asked her a question and she just go for it. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can drink. I'm like, but anyway, man. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you again, sir. And like I said, anytime you want to come on and as this project moves forward, I'd love to have you on and discuss the progress.
I hope your listeners will go to AmericanHealthSecurityProject.org. That's our website.
Well, I'm going to have that in the show notes right next to your name. So when people read it, they can click on it right away.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Hey, well, listen, guys, again, support of the show is always appreciated. TheBitterTruth.info. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.